Welcome back, everyone, to It's Really Loud in Here. I'm Joe, joined here with Pastor Tom, and we'll just get right into it. So, we've been talking about my anxiety and how it affects me and stuff like that, and it's just like I keep realizing that I get caught into these like really depressive cycles sometimes, and it's like it gets to a point now where it's like it's more annoying than anything because it's just stopping me from doing all these things. But it's like I've finally gotten the realization that it's like in those moments of darkness, it's like that's when you really can find God if you're looking for him in the right places. Mm-hmm. And it's like I've been spending all this time like searching for peace or peace and quiet, as you know, parents say right. So often, right? And it's just like I've come to the realization that peace is not the absence of trouble.
Right.
It's like peace is 100% the presence of God.
Right.
And it's like when you come to accept that and believe that, you're able to find peace and comfort in God. And I think that is kind of what I want to focus on unpacking today.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic.
Because things are only getting worse and worse around the world, and not my situation, but it's like I'm seeing negative patterns in myself that I want to just get rid of. Mm-hmm. And it's just I guess talking them out will help me gain more awareness. It's like I think if we all start talking about things and we gain more awareness on it.
Right. I think it's a great topic that you picked to start with. I think it affects so many people today, and I think you said something that's very profound. And you know, Jesus spoke about this, and Jesus, a lot of people say, contradicted himself in Scripture.
Yeah.
You know, Jesus said, "I came to give you peace. My peace I give unto you." He's known as the Prince of Peace. You know, he will give us peace that passes all understanding. Yeah. You know. But then he said something very interesting. He said, the peace I give is not as the world gives. It's a different kind of peace. Because the world, they define peace, as you just said, as the absence of conflict.
Yeah.
Well, that's a problem because in the world that we live in today, there isn't an absence of conflict. There's always a new issue coming on, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be personal or whether it be societal, there's always another issue.
Right.
So most people are not going to experience peace based upon that definition. And then the contradiction, what people will say, is because they don't understand. Jesus said, I didn't come to bring peace, I came to bring a sword.
Right.
Like, wait a minute. You know, I thought you said you came to bring peace, but now you're saying I didn't come to bring peace. Well, he was saying is, the peace I give is not as the world gives. That when you serve Jesus, the sword is he's going to stir things up.
Right.
It's going to make people around you uncomfortable. It's going to make you uncomfortable to force you to examine yourself. But the peace that he gives is not external, it's internal.
Right.
And why that's so important is because we have very little control over the external. So therefore, if my definition of peace is based upon what's going on around me, that's dangerous because I have no control over that.
Right.
And so therefore, I am a slave to the ups and downs of society, or even the ups and downs of people I know, or the ups and downs of the war that's going on in Ukraine, or, you know, the latest killer bees that are going around, whatever, you know?
Yeah.
But Jesus said, I don't want you to be subject to everything around you. I want you to have peace that's like a well that lives within you.
Yeah.
A peace that nobody could touch, that nobody could ever take away, no matter what the situation is. It's that inner peace.
Yeah.
And that's what Jesus came to give. And that's the most important aspect of peace that we could ever grab hold of and seek after.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about it and we worked on this a lot of like saying that when it gets rough, like your circumstances are only temporary, you know, and you have to remember that God's always in control and he always has a plan to make you prosper. If you remember Jeremiah 29:11, mm-hmm. which I don't have to quote Bible verses to you because you know it backwards, forward, sideways, upside down, but you know, I think that's important. Like Jesus, like we talked about last time, Jesus wants us to write the scriptures on our hearts.
Right.
And not going into like too much of like the theology and like But what that means is he wants us to be able to recall, I think, he wants us to be able to recall those for those times that we are in a downward spiral or we are having those negative thoughts and stuff, that we can use them as our ammunition to fight back against. It's like, well, if my negative thought is saying this and the Bible says that, I know the Bible's true, so I'm just going to go with that and we're just going to go forward. We're not going to waste time, trying to battle it out, with the negative thought. It's like what the Bible says is true. It's
right.
And it's not. It's I don't know. Inerrant. I guess, is that the right word?
Yeah. Well, what you're really asking is, and not even asking, but what you're asking is, who's the real shepherd of your soul?
Right.
We like to say, "Oh, Jesus is the shepherd of my soul."
Yeah.
Well, what does that really mean?
Yeah.
And our soul, for those that aren't really aware of this, our souls are mind, thoughts, emotions. That's our soul, where they come together. And the real shepherd of your soul is who guides and controls your thoughts.
Yeah.
Because whoever controls your thoughts controls you, controls the real who you are.
Yeah.
There are people, I'm just going to make up a scenario, but it's happened a billion times in society. There could be a guy who falls in love with a girl, and he gives total control of everything he thinks about and everything he thinks about himself to that girl. Well, she's now become the shepherd of his soul because she controls his thoughts. And that's a dangerous place to put yourself in.
Yeah.
But when Christ is our shepherd, he controls our thoughts because we surrender our thoughts to him through the Word of God. The Bible actually says that we need to bring every thought to the captivity of Christ. In other words, you're my shepherd, so I allow you. Jesus said, "My sheep know my voice."
Yeah.
Well, how do we know his? What does that mean? So many people say, "Oh, God told me this. I heard from God." And I'm sorry, I don't believe most of them that actually happens. Yeah. The voice that God speaks to us most clearly with and most often with is the voice of his word, as you said, that's written on the tables of our heart. And that's where we need to listen to God, and that's what brings us peace in our lives.
And when I'm trying to think of the right words to use this, my brain's like slow today. But it's like, and that's only like part one. Part two is like how we take that and bring that into the external world and how we respond. And you've preached many messages. You did a whole series about it, which is on YouTube, Lights, Cameras, Reactions, that talks about this. Is that how we react to certain situations kind of will sway it one way or the other, if it's going to go well or if it's not going to go so well.
I agree.
And it's just, and like you said before, like that's how you can bring peace into an otherwise chaotic situation, is by how you react or how your lack of reaction could be. But I think that's, I don't know where I'm going with this.
Well, I'll jump in here, right? Because I think what you just said is very, very true, and I think it's very, very important that, I've often said, as you know from the pulpit, that the real us isn't our actions. The real us is our reactions.
Yeah.
Because anybody could control their actions to a certain extent and act good, act nice, put on their best behavior. But when something catches us off guard, it's our reactions that's when the real us comes out. And I want to touch on something that you kind of started with. You put a thought in my mind, and I think is very prevalent in this conversation right now. People who really suffer from anxiety or stress, they seem to get dragged down and get bothered by a lot of thoughts from external things. It seems to stick to them, I've often said that people are going to be like crazy glue or be like Teflon.
Yeah.
And people who are Teflon, things just hits them and it rolls right off of them. But when people have that, what I call the crazy glue personality, it's the littlest thing annoys them and it sticks on them. And then what happens? They begin to consume about it in their mind. And it annoys. They're easily annoyed, easily aggravated all the time. And that's what starts the downward spiral because it sticks to us. Whereas if we could just, there's a story in the Bible where the Apostle Paul was shipwrecked on an island and a snake jumped out of the fire and it bit him on the hand. Mm-hmm. And it says he just flicked it off back into the fire. And he was fine. What could have been a deadly situation turned out to be nothing. But I know you fall into this category. And don't get me wrong, it happens to us all.
Oh, yeah.
But it seems somebody who's battling with anxiety, it happens at a much higher, more intense level.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna shy away. I'm gonna fully accept, because it's true, and it's like here, and this is with this whole, what we're trying to do here is like, God proves us in the fire, right? And it's like, you know what? I'm happy to be the example and put everything I'm doing wrong out there, because one, it'll make me more aware and help me change, but also I'm doing it in a safe space.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing it with someone who I know has my best interest in mind, to teach me, so that way we can get over these things and overcome. Because it's like, I know anxiety is not a death sentence,
right?
It's
not.
It's so it's just learning how to manage and get through it. And it's not a program either. There's no program it's a process, and you have to just trust in the process and figure out how the process works for you, because it's different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some fundamental things that need to be, I think, there in place. But yeah.
Well, answer me, what kind of reactions or thoughts stick to somebody who struggles with anxiety that maybe the average person wouldn't become so consumed with?
Yeah. So, like, every criticism, whether good, bad, it's just on a loop, especially the negative ones. Anything that could possibly go wrong, it's just there, and it's just cycling. Like, if I'm asked to do something, like, I have like contingency plans for everything, just to troubleshoot everything before I even get to start doing whatever it is that I'm supposed to be doing. And that's definitely a negative characteristic.
Sounds exhausting.
Well, it is. It is. That's why I'm not able to complete much, because I'm just so tired and like brain dead all the time, because I just don't have the capacity to keep up with it. It's like, I think we're like the equivalent to computers, but we're not plugged into an outlet all the time.
Right.
But it's like, I'm finding the more I plug myself into the Bible, it's like, that's like my outlet that gives me the strength and the power and the ability to even just process and get rid of what needs to get rid of, like empty my trash bin, and stuff like that. But yeah, it's definitely an exhausting thing. But it's like, you can't let that. And here's the other thing that goes along with it. Like, once you realize it, you can't beat yourself up about it.
Right.
Like, that's the other big thing. Because then it's like, once you open the gate, it's like the enemy will just start flooding in with whatever he can to just bog you down. So it's a complicated.
It is a complicated
thing.
And if you're watching this and you're relating to what we're talking about right now, I want to encourage you, get your family members and maybe some friends to watch this, because they probably don't understand. They probably don't get it. They probably think, oh, you're just being lazy, or you just don't want to do this. That's your problem. You're just being antisocial, as though you have total control over what's going on. I had a conversation the other day with somebody who has a family member who was probably suffering from some type of social anxiety, mental illness, something like that. And they come from the school where hard work, you got to get up early in the morning, because their father was a drill sergeant in their lives, and that's all they ever knew. And now they're dealing with a family member who was clearly suffering from some type of anxiety disorder and struggles greatly, and they can't comprehend it. In fact, they don't believe it. And then they get angry at them and are very critical of them, which, of course, is the worst thing you could do, because that just keeps the cycle going and makes it even worse and pushes them further down that hill. And it must be very difficult for somebody who battles with anxiety to have people close to them basically say, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
I don't believe what you're dealing with. It's your fault.
Yeah.
And have you ever encountered people in your life and family, friends, close people who just don't get it and don't believe it?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people that don't understand and don't believe it. But it's luckily, by the grace of God, like the ones that are really close are starting to understand now, and they've been very helpful and understanding and compassionate in that sense. But there's still a lot of people that don't understand, that refuse to believe it, whether it's something that's been ingrained into them when they were young, or something that they're afraid to address. I'm finding that more common too, is that I think we all have anxiety a little bit.
Sure.
It's just that some people are of the school of thought, and I was of this school of thought for a while. It's like, if you don't open the door, like, nothing will happen. Just keep it locked up, and,
Right.
and everything will be good. But that's not the case, because it just compounds, and it just gets 10 times worse when that door is open. It's like the Kool-Aid man kicking down a brick wall, you know?
Right.
But I don't know how to, like, you can't fault anyone for not, and that's what I've come to learn. It's like we've had this whole big discussion on bitterness and forgiveness and everything like that. And it's just like, you can't fault people for how they react to you, but you can only make them understand. But you don't make it your mission to make them understand.
That's
because
good.
you have to take care of yourself and make sure that you're,
That's
because
important.
if you're worrying about what other people think about your anxiety, it just makes your anxiety 10 times worse. And I still get caught in that sometimes now, you know, and it's part of why I don't do things that I should,
Right.
or I want to be doing and want to accomplish and want to achieve. But I don't know.
I think what you just said is so super important, and I'm glad you said it. I think that who we value, whose opinion we value, whose opinion we let affect us and influence us, is important for everybody in life. This is just a general statement out there. And we need to choose very carefully who we allow to influence our day, whose opinion of us or of our situation. And a lot of times we subconsciously put power in people's opinions who are the worst people in the world.
Yeah.
Because they just are so negative towards us or towards certain situations. But inwardly, we want them to believe us so bad. We want them to look at us positively. And so therefore, we put ourselves into positions of getting in trouble, and we are enslaved to their opinion.
Yeah.
You know, I used to use the analogy all the time. You know, let's say we have a box or like a game controller in our hand. Don't give it to that person.
Right.
Don't give them power to control your life through their opinions. And I think one of the things that has really benefited you over the last couple of years is you have now surrounded people, you know, people surrounding your life, and you've given the right people, healthy people,
Yeah.
power in their opinion over your life. People who will understand you, people who will encourage you, people who will lift you up, people who won't criticize you and put you down.
Right.
I think that's a huge change that's taken place in your life, and other people need to do the same.
Yeah, and it definitely was like one of the major things that changed everything around for me, you know. And you know, I've developed a new belief, whether it's healthy or unhealthy, you can tell me now, but it's like, I only care about what two people think about me, what God thinks about me, and then what I think about myself. Because if you don't think good about yourself, then it's just a potion for disaster, I think. You know, potion is a bad word, but recipe is a better word.
Good.
Recipe for disaster. But I'm just a Harry Potter fan, man.
Yeah.
I just like, but yeah. But it's like, obviously I care what you think about me, and you always steer me in the right direction. I'm thankful to have you in my life, and I think everyone needs that person that has they know the divine order that God created the world in. They know how everything should go, how much weight we should put on each aspect of our lives, and you know, having that person to speak into you when you're kind of confused about all of that, I think is really important.
It is, and you also have your fiance,
Yeah,
who
she's a blessing.
She was just here before. She ran out right before we started the filming of this, and I know that she provides such a comfort.
Oh yeah,
You know,
Big
to your
time.
life. Very understanding, very encouraging.
yeah.
You know, we're not even sure she's human yet. You know, she might be
No,
an
she's
angel.
angelic, very
You know,
angelic. Yeah,
no question about that. But you know, her role in your life,
Yeah.
you know, is so important. You know, you had a failed relationship
Yeah.
prior. You know,
Oh, yeah.
years ago, and we haven't really spent a lot of time talking about that, but I kind of sense that she wasn't anywhere near
no,
Danielle and her understanding of you.
yeah, and I'm not gonna. I have nothing bad to say, But I will point out like some of the obvious, like the relationship wasn't built on like a stable foundation. I think we were focusing on a lot of the wrong things, and we were kind of it was very surface level and stuff like that, which, you know, is very common these days. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm definitely not saying it's good either.
Right.
But, you know, and it was a learning experience. You know, we went our own ways. There's no hard feelings or anything. But what I appreciate that relationship, because it's God has taught me a lot in that.
Right.
And it just makes my relationship with Danielle so much better now.
Right.
You know, and it's just, I don't know, it's amazing, you know, and but it's like funny how God works sometimes, where it's like sometimes I feel like I needed to go through that to get to this point to have this relationship, you know, and you know, God likes to prove us in the fire, right? You know,
He does,
but it's a good thing.
It is. You know, I'd mentioned earlier that somebody who oftentimes struggles with anxiety, their personality is like that crazy glue, and things stick to it. And it's not just things that are personal or internal. There's also things out in society or out in the world that somebody who battles anxiety, things seem to stick in them and bother them. You know, right before we began taping this, you know, you had mentioned that for those that, well, you probably don't know this, but as we're taping this right now, it was just yesterday where there was a mass shooting in Texas.
Yeah.
And, what do they have to 18 or 19 people dead right now?
Yeah.
A horrible, horrible thing. And, you know, you had mentioned the reaction of people online and so forth. And it is a horrible thing. But it seems to me now, I'm almost 60 years old right now. I know I don't look it, but I'm almost 60 years old right now. And I think this is partially social media driven.
Oh, yeah.
But people are getting so anxiety driven, and so they take everything so personal now. Everything things that don't have anything to do with you. You know, we live in a society today where people are offended on behalf of other people who aren't even offended.
Yeah.
You know, you should be offended, but I'm not offended. Well, I'm offended on your behalf right now. And everything sticks to us.
Yeah.
Which is why the anxiety level of society is at an all-time high right now. There's so many people that are dealing with stress and anxiety, and one of the reasons is that they allow everything that comes down and hits them that they don't like to stick to them and consume them.
Yeah.
You know, and like you and I had a personal conversation a couple of weeks ago, and I try to encourage you by I keep doing this to Joe right here. For those that can't see, I do this to Joe. And I say, Joe, live your life in here, in between this little narrow path right here. Live your life there. Because outside, on either side of this, is where Joe gets into trouble. His mind starts wandering. His thoughts start wandering. He starts getting upset. He starts getting concerned about things. So no, Joe, keep it narrow. Keep your life as narrow as possible. And I think that a lot of people watching this need to learn to live within here and keep the noise, the static out here. But our society today is telling us to do the complete opposite. Go on social media, surf social media, and get consumed with everything way, 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 way out here. You know, something happened in Australia. We need to be upset about that concern. Right. It's Australia, you know?
Yeah.
But now you're not a good person. You're not a good world person if you're not bothered by what happened in Australia. You know, like, oh, live in here.
Yeah.
Life is safer and over here for you.
Yeah. Now, sidebar question.
Sure.
This is now going into like, I guess, Bible study territory.
Sure, great.
But when Jesus says, narrow is the way, is that in addition to living a holy, God-driven life, is he also talking about that, where it's like kind of not saying to put the blinders on, but kind of just put your main focus on this little section of life as compared to this greater worldview of
Yes, I agree with that. And, you know, it's Wednesday. So Sunday, you know, one of the verses that I shared on in Matthew 6:33, Jesus said, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. And prior to that, he said, you know, there are so many things the world gets worried about and consumed about with their worries and their fears. And he said, no, seek first the kingdom of God and basically said, and I'll take care of everything else.
Right.
Let me take care of it. And I do think that we need to live the narrower road in our life.
Yeah.
But again, that is going so against current social expectations out there. To again, we have to be so offended by everything that goes on and so consumed and concerned about everything that goes on. And yet there are people who, I go to work, I feed my family, I raise my family, I serve God, I try to help my little community that I live in, and they're happy with that. They're satisfied with that.
Yeah.
And there are people that would criticize them for that. Well, don't you care that in Tunisia there's somebody that has monkeypox over there? Well, no, not really. I mean, I feel bad for them, but what am I going to do?
Yeah.
We'll protest. Do I have to? Is my protest going to change anything?
Right.
You know? And we live in that mentality today, and people don't understand that this mentality that's driving the world. It's incredible. It's driving the world.
Yeah.
Increases anxiety to such a high level that it's destroying people's lives.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just one aspect of anxiety. Now I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit. Another aspect of anxiety, we are damaging our children. You know, we again, in our society, if your kid likes to play baseball, you know, it used to be when I was a kid, and I was a pretty decent, you know, ball player in my day, we played 10 or 12 games a year. Now you have kids playing 10 or 12 games on a weekend.
Yeah.
Every weekend for 5 months, 6, 7 months straight. Every weekend they're going to a tournament.
Yeah.
And they're traveling all over. And parents don't realize that stress. Well, my kid says he's having fun. Yes, your kid says he's having fun, but if your kid ate a box of Twinkies every day, for, you know, they'd say, I'm having fun. That doesn't mean it's healthy for them.
Right.
And we put this stress on them that they always have to, you know, hit the ball or make the play or something like that.
Yeah.
And they're traveling up and down the East Coast, you know, or the West Coast if they're living out there. I'm like, my Lord, the stress that we're putting on kids.
Yeah.
And then you hear the parents screaming at the referees and the parents fighting with each other, the parents screaming at the kids out there. You know, it's like, we are damaging our kids.
Yeah.
We're putting stress levels on them that adults can't. Listen to me. Adults can't handle that stress level. Never mind 8, 9, 10-year-old kids. I mean, they may look. See, here's the deception. Looking at them, we think they look fine.
Right.
On the outside, but we don't know the stress that's slowly building up on the inside. And then we wonder why our kids, when they hit 18, 19, 20, they're a mess.
Yeah.
Stress is coming from all over in society.
End up like me. Can't function.
It's true.
But it is true. And that's why we're here talking about it.
Right.
Because it's like, it's a problem that needs to be talked about.
And I want to add another aspect over here. The thought just came to me. So you have all the social justice pressure that's on everybody in the world.
Yeah.
You know, you have that. You have what I call the cult of sports that has taken over much of the world. But then you also have a whole group of helicopter parents out there who, oh, my kid who's 6 years old, they're going to go to Princeton or Harvard or Yale.
Yeah.
And we're pressuring them. They have to do this. They have to, and they got special teachers for this and special training for this, and they have to take all these high-level courses. And my Lord, these kids get so stressed out because parents are driving them to such extreme levels, and it's not healthy. You know, if there's any parents watching this, it's not the most important thing in the world for your kid to go to an Ivy League school.
Right.
It's not. If they're wired that way, if they're naturally intelligent and naturally brilliant, they'll get there. But if you have to force them to do it, not healthy at all.
Yeah, and to take that a step further, it's like social media is the same exact thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Where you have a lot of people, and I see it a lot with like teenage girls, where they get this idea of what they're supposed to look like, this image in their head of what they're supposed to look like through social media.
Right,
and then if they're not able to achieve it, they develop their own issues, whether it's anorexia, self-harming, stuff like that. And not to say that it's only teenage girls. It's I fall into that category too. But I hate social media with a burning passion. I think it's very unhealthy, especially for someone like me with anxiety, because you get the complete wrong idea of society and what life is supposed to be. But don't want to go on a rant.
Well, I will echo that with a very an adult topic over here. You know, as a pastor and one who does a lot of counseling with people, it's amazing how many misconceptions our world has.
Yeah.
And as you said, women think that this is what they have to look sexy or attractive.
Right.
Well, guys have their own issues where they think that they're supposed to look a certain way, especially in their manhood.
Yeah.
And then they realize at one point that's a lie. That there are not all these men that are out there that are looking a certain way.
Right.
You know? That's not true. The average person is such and such a size in their manhood, per se. Well, do you know how many guys think that there's something wrong with me because, I'm not the size of a porn star guy?
Right.
And, well 99% of society isn't.
Right.
Yeah. But they don't know that. I had a conversation with a man one time, young man, got married, and he kind of put his head down and sheepishly said, "I'm having a problem. I can't perform." I go, "Well, what's going on?" It's not working. I go, "Well, how often are you having sex?" "Oh, 2 or 3 times a day." I go, 2 or 3 times a day? I go, "I'd be dead."
Yeah.
I go, and he looked at me like in shock. He goes, "Well, isn't that what married couples do?" I go, "No."
Yeah.
Maybe once in a blue moon or something like that, but
Yeah.
no. And I told him, I said, the average married couple who was probably below the age of 40, maybe twice a week. And he looked at me like in shock because in his mind, because of things he read, movies he saw, different things, that no, everybody out there, when they're newly married, they're going like, man, we're like a racehorse out over here. We're going. I said, that's not true. And he was filling himself with such anxiety, and there were so many young men, never mind young women, young men out there who are filled with anxiety and fear over their physical body based upon lies that are being perpetuated through social media.
And Hollywood and everything we're watching and everything. And like, this is the reason I went to film school, as we talked about and stuff. And I love the art process of making movies, but I refuse to work in Hollywood just because of the stories that they're pushing out. Everything has to be woke now. Everything has to be so sexualized.
Right.
And it started, like I'll even say, it started back in the 80s, 90s with movies that I grew up on and loved as a kid. And it's just very disturbing. And this is where I have my problem, because now we're going to, I guess, get off to a little side topic. But it's like a lot of people, a lot of arguments that I get for becoming a Christian is like, oh, it's a fertility cult. It's this, that, and the other thing. They don't want you to have sex. It's like, no, it's not that they don't want us to have sex. It's that they want us to have self-control. Mm-hmm. And it's like, don't act like an animal. God, otherwise you would have been like a bird, a wolf, or whatever. Right. You have a human, you're intelligent. God gave us an intelligence for a reason. Let's honor that. Let's have some self-respect, have some self-control. And maybe the world won't be as screwed up as it is right now.
I agree.
But that's not the way that people are looking at it. People are looking at, oh, Christians don't want us to have fun. Christians don't want us to do this, that, and the other thing. Well, did you ever stop to think that too much of something is a bad thing?
Maybe God knows more than us. It's amazing when you study statistics. Back in the early 60s, that's when the free love culture came in. And as a result of the free love culture, one of the famous songs, I think this was the 60s, and I use this all the time as an example, was, if you can't be with the one you love the one you're with.
Yeah.
Great sounding song. But the message behind that is just, really, we'll just have sex with whoever you're with.
Right.
And as a result of the free love culture, what has changed in society? Number one, the divorce rate skyrocketed as a result of the free love culture. And if you just keep extrapolating that or going down the road, I should say more to that, how many families were destroyed as a result of, how many children's lives were destroyed as a result of that? And the answer is countless millions are destroyed.
Yeah.
Sexually transmitted diseases skyrocketed, as a result. Abortion skyrocketed as a result. And it's almost like maybe God knew what he was talking about. God doesn't want us to limit sex, how often we have sex. Have it as often as you want. Just do it with your spouse, God would say, because it keeps it special.
Right.
And it's the two becoming one. And now when, you have sex with so many different partners, really, what's so special about your wife?
Right.
And how do you feel knowing that your wife has already had sex with 10, 15 other guys before you got there?
Yeah.
I wouldn't feel too good about that.
No. No, yeah, definitely.
And vice versa. And it's just amazing how the world sees things in such a distorted form. But the bottom line is God knows what he's talking about. If God says don't do this, there's a reason why he says don't do it.
Right.
It's not because he's mad or he wants to toy with you. He knows it's unhealthy for you. Just think of it this way. As parents, we tell our kids, young kids, don't play in the street. Well, what do our kids think? Oh, well, that means the street must be the funnest place in the world to play. My parents don't want me to go across the street or play in the street because they're mean.
Yeah.
No, they know it's unhealthy. You can get hurt. You can get killed.
Yeah.
Come in past a certain time. Come in before it's dark. Oh, my parents don't want me to have any fun. No, they understand there are dangers that are out there. They're trying to protect you. It's the same thing with God. When God says, have sex with your spouse, keep it limited to that.
Yeah.
It's because we, like babies, oh, you're trying to just restrict my fun, No, God knows things. He sees dangers that we don't see.
Right.
And history and just some of the stats I gave are proof that God knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. And just to add on to those stats, it's like, think of simple science. How do babies get made?
Right.
Right? It's like, if you're not ready to have a kid, don't go through the process of trying to have a kid.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like that would solve a lot of the issues that we see that are affecting society the way they are, like especially in inner cities and stuff like that. I was lucky enough to grow up around enough guys to step in to give me fatherly advice when I was growing up, but I know the effects of how much it sucks to grow up without a dad.
Right.
There was still a lot that I missed that I felt like, that I still feel like I missed. That's why I'm looking forward to when I'm ready to have a child, like to have that time and fill that gap a little bit. But it's like our government's answer is let's just throw money at the problem and victimize people and make them have this negative thought process about themselves, when instead we should be teaching them how, like, foundational things to build them up, not giving them an excuse to tear themselves down. Mm-hmm. But
I think that's good.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
I just think that a lot of people are trying to come up with solutions, but when the solution, like on their own, when the solutions are in front of us the whole time, but no one wants to look at them because, oh, it's an old book, or, it doesn't really mean anything. But it's the thing that's been keeping humanity going for 2,000 years. So I don't know how you say it's not real and it doesn't work, because it's just like, just on a basic logical level, you can't say it's not true. Right. It's been true for billions and billions of people for the history of the world. Yep. So I don't know what makes people think it's different today.
It's people have been rebelling against God since God created people.
Yeah.
You said something about we're looking for solutions, and I think that this is probably one of the biggest problems in our society today. We're looking to solve every problem that's out there.
Yeah.
We have to eliminate racism. You'll never eliminate racism. You'll never eliminate hatred. You'll never eliminate stupidity. You'll never eliminate evil. Evil will never be eliminated. It's always going to be evil people that are out there. You could take guns away from people, and they're going to use knives. Take knives away, they're going to use cars. They're going to use something, because evil, people do evil things. But the problem is we're asking the wrong questions, so therefore we're going to come up with the wrong solution.
Right.
What is the real problem in society today? The real problem, the number one problem that we need to address, is there's a lack of morality in society. And we are, here's what I think is so ironic. We are striving to have an amoral society. We want to remove every boundary that traditional religion has put up. So we're trying to remove it. So we're trying to get immoral and be proud in our immorality, yet then we're surprised when we have the penalties or we reap from the lack of morality in society.
Yeah.
Like, why are we surprised? When we strive for immorality, we reap what we sow. So what we're seeing are people who have no morals in them whatsoever.
Yeah.
We're seeing young children who, I mean, and it's funny, people laugh at this nowadays. Me, I would have lost my teeth if I was young, if a referee called me out or called a strike. I think it was a strike. You could see an 8-year-old kid turn around and say, F you to the referee or the umpire. And it's like, I would have been dead. But, his father's cheering. You tell him, man. You told him.
Yeah.
And there's no morality in society.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because God is the author of that morality, and we're rejecting God, and so therefore we're rejecting morality. As a result, craziness, is taking place. If you take all the fences off the zoo, you're gonna have chaos around that zoo.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, evil and our flesh is like a zoo of deadly animals. But God and His Word is the fence around that.
Right.
And it keeps things in check. But we want to rip the fences away and then say, oh, how, my son was just killed by a lion.
Yeah.
Well, why are you surprised about that? You took the fences away.
Right.
And that's what's happening in our society today.
Yeah. And kind of bringing this back around is like, that's why we need to focus on God, to kind of, for people like me with anxiety that just have a hard time in general, like we need to focus on God to keep us from being dragged down by all of that. Like, we had a great dialogue today about a lot of things that are going on in society, but it's like, how I work is like, now Joe wants to go home and solve all the world's problems, because if I can solve it for other people, I can solve it for myself. I can feel good about myself. But that's not the solution. Like, one of my favorite sayings growing up is like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Right. And it's just like, now more than ever, like, I feel like that, because I feel like I want to bash everyone over the head with the Bible, because it's like, this book has been here. You should read it, because everything that you're complaining about, it can give you some good direction on how to deal with it. And I have to listen to that myself, which I do. I spend like, the only good thing about my anxiety and from keeping me from holding a steady job is that I'm able to spend hours and hours and hours in the Word, because that's my only that's literally my saving grace. Right. Is the ability to just take in and what God says and have that be the influence on my life. I just want to share 3 things real quick of like how I quiet down. We call it, it's really loud in here, right? And how my thoughts go so fast. So I have like this 3-step process that I always kind of use to kind of quiet me down. So like, the first thing is I have to stay in the moment, and that's usually like, I pray to God to give me direction. And I say, God, I surrender. It's your will. I'm not in control here. I obviously can't make the right decisions because I keep falling off a cliff and end up in a valley somewhere. Right. I need you to show me. And the more you pray and the more you ask, like, God's there to listen. And the more you pray, what I found out is what I pray for to God, in turn, He makes me more aware of what I'm asking for and opens up the doors for me to take the action to make those changes that I'm looking for. And it's really like, people are looking for God to like stick His hand down and do it for them, but that's not how God works. God exists outside of matter, space, and time, right? So it's like, He gave us all the tools we need. He even gave us Himself in flesh form through Jesus. Right. So it's like, now the ball's in our court, but it's like, we have to submit our thought, like you said before, we have to submit that to Him. The second part is that we have to think differently. Like, I know the Bible talks a lot about repentance, and repentance goes with sin, and people don't like to use those words, because I think that, I don't want to talk bad about the Catholic Church, but I just grew up like not knowing the correct definitions of some basic words in our faith. It's like repent and sin. Like, I was afraid of those words. I didn't want to talk about those words. Those words made me uncomfortable. But when you think about the actual definition of those words, it's so mind-blowing. Yeah. Like, sin, people think it's like this terrible, terrible thing. I'm not saying sin is good, But if you look at the definition of sin, it means to miss the mark.
Right.
So it's not condemning you to hell. It's just saying that you're not doing what God is asking you to do, or what God is calling you to do,
or what's healthy for you.
Yeah.
Right.
And repent is to think differently. I know I don't have to tell you, but I'm sharing with you guys all of the knowledge that I've learned from finding a church and finding a pastor that, you know, is knows what they're talking about, and they're in it. Their heart is in it for the right reason. I've had such a struggle finding a church. I know a lot of people are turned off from religion because of that, but it's like you can't give up that process. But yeah, so you have to.
I'm one of those people who are turned off by that religion too.
Yeah.
By the way.
But that's why I always say, like, this is not religion. This is faith. There's such a difference. Like, just because I pray Our Father and Hail Mary 17 times doesn't mean I'm saved.
Right.
You know, the reason why I'm saved is because what Jesus did on the cross. And that's what keeps me going. But to get back to thinking differently is that you can't get caught in the same thought cycles. You have to fill your head with new things. Like, if I'm going to sit here and fester on something negative, like, just for a recent example, like the school shooting yesterday, like, there's nothing that I personally can do to change what happened.
Right.
What I can do is offer prayer, offer support and condolence to the family, and if anyone who is affected, I can be the best Christian that I can be to them. Christ told us to sit next to each other and cry with each other and support each other emotionally. That's what I can do. But I can't go down, like, I have no authority to go and find, I mean, they killed the gunman and stuff, but it's like, I can't do, but instead of ruminating on that, you know, giving it its proper respect and stuff, but like, you have to fill your head with things of praise and things, like, in every bad situation, there's something good that always comes out. Like like you mentioned, my past failed relationship. I was married for 6 months and then got divorced, but look what came out of that.
Right.
I'm in such a beautiful relationship now that when I was in marriage counseling in my last relationship, they're saying, like, marriages don't last past 7 years and stuff. And now it's like, I'm going to be with her till I die.
Amen. Beautiful.
I'm like, and I didn't think that was possible. And I see a lot of people that don't think that's possible with their spouses. I'm like, man, I wish, like, you would just, like, have an ounce of faith just so you can just open the door for yourself into a whole new life. And then, I know I'm all over the place with that. But the last and third thing is that you really have to embrace the unusual. You have to be comfortable just getting weird with, like, Jesus. I mean, I know it sounds strange, but it's like, it's so uncomfortable at first. But the beauty is that the more uncomfortable and awkward you are, the more people will love you for your amount of faith. And that's what blows me away about the church community. Like, I can be that really strange person that wears tie-dye pants and, like, bright neon shirts to church, and I'm just there just bopping away at the worship music, and people will just come up to you and encourage you because of the faith that you have. Amen. And it's just like embracing that unusualness and just rejoicing in the Lord through that suffering, and it'll always pull you through. It's just like, those are like the three things that always help me get to the other side, I guess.
Yeah, I just want to touch on that last point for a second. Embrace the unusualness or awkwardness or socially unacceptedness of being a Christian.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. Let's just say that this microphone right here is our faith in God, our Christianity, our faith in God. Well, 100 years ago, if this is life, God was, like, to the right end of it, accepted, socially accepted in society. If this is what's accepted and this is what's not accepted, God was right over here.
Yeah.
Well, society has now shifted like this. And now, all of a sudden, God and religion is on the totally unacceptable side over here.
Yeah.
But the amazing thing is, God never changed position.
No.
God's still in the exact same place that he was. We've changed. Society has changed. So God didn't all of a sudden become weird. Faith in God didn't all of a sudden become, a crazy thing. No, yeah. It's always the same. It's the shift in society that has pulled us away from God. God's still the same loving God, caring God that he always was. It's just that we have allowed society to put God in a different category, but God's never changed.
Yeah.
So for my closing thoughts about this. You could be looking, there's a song that was sung many years ago, looking for love in all the wrong places,
Yeah.
And, you could look for mental health in all the wrong places, and you could be diligent in your search. You could be looking for acceptance and be diligent, but look in all the wrong places. And if you want to have that mental health, if you want to be whole and healed, the answer is still in God. It's still in that relationship with Jesus Christ, your maker. And a lot of people don't want that, Like I can remember years ago before I went full-time to the ministry, I used to work at a place. Some guy came up to me. He said, "Tom, how come nothing ever bothers you?" Because everybody in my place where I work was miserable. And I'd be smiling, laughing. And I was about to answer, and he said, "And don't tell me that Jesus stuff."
Yeah.
So I just looked down and started working. He goes, "Well, aren't you going to give me an answer?" I said, "Well, you said don't tell you Jesus, and Jesus is the answer." He goes, "Oh, I knew you were going to say that."
Yeah.
And he walked away. See, he wanted what I had because he saw the peace that was in my life.
Right.
He just didn't want it to come through Christ.
Yeah.
He wanted it in another way, in his own way. And so don't be that person who's looking for love in all the wrong places. Don't be that person who's looking for peace in all the wrong places. Turn to the Prince of Peace. Turn to the maker of your soul. One of my quotes that I've used in church a bunch of times is that only the maker of your soul can heal your soul.
Yeah.
And that's what God does. So don't give up on God. Run to God, and he's there waiting for you.
Yeah. So I guess in wrapping up, would you agree that the secret to peace and joy and happiness is keeping your focus on God?
Absolutely.
And just to repeat again what I said before is that when our circumstances are temporary, and we have to recognize that, and we have to really believe that, because that's the truth. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The devil's a liar. When we realize and remember who God is, then we can start to really see what happiness and peace looks like in our lives. And that's, I guess, my wisdom for the day. Trying to sound wise for once, but
it's true.
And that's speaking to everyone and speaking to myself, because it's always a battle. But thank you again for always taking the time to speak with me and have these kinds of discussions. I really appreciate it. You don't know how much.
Glad to be here. Always glad to be here for you and for anyone that's watching right now.
But until next time, thank you for listening, and we hope you join us again.
God bless.
See you guys soon.
Bye-bye.
I don't know what we're